I've interviewed Waits, sit-down interviews with him twice in my life. The first time was here in New York in 1985, between Swordfish Trombones and Rain Dogs. I mean, I just fell in love with the guy straight away. He was so charming and funny and intelligent and different. And he hadn't been in New York that long, and he had one child at that point, was expecting his second child. And the second time I interviewed him was 14 years later, so almost 10 years ago exactly from now, in near Santa Rosa, where he was living and where he still lives in Northern California. And so this is Mule Variations, one of his best albums, I think, was about to come out. And this is Act 2, Chapter 6, The Crooked Tree and the Straight Tree. Tom Waits squats on the fender of his blue 1970 Coupe de Ville and tells a joke. Two old guys, he says, are sitting on a bench in Central Park and discussing retirement. I got this new hobby, says one. I took up beekeeping. That's nice, says the other man. Yeah, I got 2,000 bees in my apartment. 2,000 bees, huh? Where you keep them? I keep them in a shoebox. A shoebox? Isn't that a little uncomfortable for the bees? Ah, fuck them, it's just a hobby. Tom Waits says that Eddie Izzard didn't get the joke either. He concedes that you probably have to have lived in New York City for a few years to appreciate it. Watching Waits on this sun-dappled afternoon in January 1999, kicking back on a country road on the outskirts of Santa Rosa, it's hard to imagine him living in New York or any other city. With his feet planted in a pair of old boots and a nest of russet hair dancing atop his creased, kindly face, he looks like he's just wandered in from his backyard after a long afternoon wrestling with farm equipment. His strong, gnarled fingers, several adorned with chunky silver rings, are grey-brown and calloused. He's 9 months shy of his 50th birthday, and he's starting to resemble some weather-beaten drifter out of Richard Avedon's In the American West. When he's finished the joke, Waits climbs into the Coupe de Ville, a replacement for the 1967 model he totaled last year. I'm not hurt, he protested when his son Casey saw him staunching a head wound with a McDonald's takeout bag. He drives me back to Santa Rosa, lamenting the way people move up here from San Francisco, tear down trees, and build gated communities called Twin Oaks and Pine Bluffs. You ever notice when they're building a new housing development, he says, they always name it after the thing they destroyed? Casey wasn't even born the last time I met Waits. 14 years on, a second son, Sullivan, has been added to the brood. You know, their father muses as he drives, I didn't want to be the guy who woke up when he was 65 and said, gee, I forgot to have kids. I mean, someone took the time to have us, right? Being a proper dad is clearly high on his priority list. Though he and Kathleen write together, he says there's little overlap between work and domesticity in their home. Mostly my kids are just looking for any way I can come in handy, he says. Clothes, rides, money. That's about all I'm good for. But I think it's the way it's supposed to be. Parenthood was generally the reason Waits gave for the 7-year gap between Bone Machine and Mule Variations. Other times he merely grunted that he'd got stuck in traffic. Pressed on the subject of being a contented paterfamilias, he wriggled his way out of the stereotype. It sounds like a loaded question, he said to me. If I say no, I'll be in trouble with my family. If I say yes, I get in trouble with everybody else. Asked for the toughest thing he'd ever had to deal with in his life, Waits replied that it was raising kids, being a grown-up, living in the real world, paying the bills, bringing home the groceries, having responsibilities. He said American culture had a codependent relationship with artists that enabled many of them to behave irresponsibly and that he himself had once subscribed to. There's a notion that artists are kind of impetuous and eccentric and irresponsible and unreliable, he said, but I don't think you have to be. For 3 years, Waits changed a lot of diapers and made a lot of school runs in a humongous Chevy Suburban. He played no gigs and turned down all movie offers. I wanted to pull myself out of the limelight, he said. When he did work, family life was never far away. He sits at the mixing board, a little preoccupied and unable to get comfortable in his chair, wrote a journalist watching him mix The Black Rider at Sunset Sound. Until he discovers he's sitting on a bottle of baby formula he'd forgotten was tucked in a back pocket. He will not talk about his wife or his 3 children, but their pictures always seem close by. One afternoon, Casey Waits came home from school and said he'd been in a fight with a kid who claimed his dad sang better than Waits. He added that both Casey and his daughter Kelly Simone were, like most kids, embarrassed to be seen at school with their father. "Hey, Dad, your pants are halfway around your knees," Kelly Simone would tut, "and do something with your hair. Kids are starting to talk." When the children asked why he didn't have a regular job like other dads, Waits' response was to tell the story of the crooked tree and the straight tree. Every day the straight tree would say to the crooked tree, "Look at me, I'm tall and I'm straight and I'm handsome. You're all crooked and bent over. No one wants to look at you." One day the loggers came and saw the crooked tree and the straight tree, and they said, "Just cut down the straight trees and leave the rest." The straight trees were all turned into lumber and toothpicks and paper, but the crooked tree is still there, growing stronger and stranger every day. Kelly Simone and Casey decided it was actually pretty cool to have a crooked tree for a father, even if his pants did hang down around his knees. Thank you.